this lesson, we will go through the risk analysis process and steps for setting up our Acumen Risk workbook. Firstly, let's look at the typical steps for running a schedule risk analysis in Acumen Risk. Simply put, the process for running a schedule risk analysis in Acumen Risk is: import a schedule into Acumen Risk. Evaluate and improve your schedule quality and clean up the schedule. Assign duration uncertainty to the risk model. Add discrete risks to the risk model. Run a pre-mitigated risk analysis. Then, run a risk workshop to analyze the exposure chart and risk drivers and evaluate possible mitigations. Add mitigations and run the risk analysis. Then, update the project schedule. Lastly, publish the risk analysis results. Let's go over the basic steps for setting up a workbook. If you have already completed my course on Acumen Fuse step by step, you will be familiar with this process, but it is a good idea for us to go over the steps again. When you first open Acumen Fuse, it will open in the S1 Projects view by default. In the center of the workspace, a splash screen will be visible. It will tell us that our workbook contains no projects. From this splash screen, we can open existing workbooks or metric library templates. So let's set up our new My Risk workbook. In the Projects pane on the left, you will see that Workbook 1 has been loaded by default. Currently, it contains no projects. Click on the Acumen icon in the top left of the workspace and select Save As. A window will open that asks us what type of file we are saving. So select Deltek Acumen Workbook. In the browser window that opens, we can rename the workbook if we want. So let's rename it as My Risk Workbook. Click Save to save the workbook, and you will note that the name of the workbook will appear at the top of the screen, as well as in the left-hand pane, or navigation pane. Now, let's link a project to My Risk Workbook. Make sure that the tab for S1 Projects is selected, then click on the Primavera icon in the top menu. There are many options for opening Primavera files, but for our exercise, we will select the first option for Single Project XER. Now, we can browse to our Primavera sample files in the Acumen directory. Select Initial Plan XER and click Open. A confirmation screen will open, so highlight Initial Plan and click OK. This will link the Project XER file to the workbook. You will notice that the name of the file, Initial Plan, will appear in the left-hand panel, and it will be indented under the workbook title. You will also notice that a cylinder icon symbol will appear to the left of the project file name. To the right of the file name, there will be a 0 in brackets. So, what does this mean? The cylinder means that the file has been linked but has not yet been imported. The checkbox gives us the option of including the project data in the ribbon analysis. Leave it checked. The 0 indicates the number of activities that are in the project is currently 0 because the project has not yet been imported. Next, click on the Acumen icon in the top left corner of the top menu. A drop-down menu will appear, so select File, Save As again. You can now select a directory for saving your workbook file, but let's just keep it in the default folder for now, so just click Cancel. Now let's import our project file. Click on the Import All Projects button in the top menu, then click Import All Projects from the pull-down menu. You will note that the remaining file data has been imported and the cylinders have been changed to logos and activity numbers are shown in brackets. Now that the data has been imported, save the workbook by clicking the little Save icon at the top left. Now, before we get started with Acumen Risk, let's examine what to look for when developing a risk model. Firstly, the schedule for the risk model needs to be robust. It must have sound logic, cleansed and complete. Secondly, duration uncertainty estimates need to have been assigned to all activities in the schedule model. Thirdly, discrete risk events need to have been identified and assigned to activities that they will impact. So we need a cleansed, robust schedule, defined duration uncertainty for activities, and identified and assigned discrete risks. As we progress through this course, we're going to have a look at these three requirements. In the left-hand projects pane, highlight the initial plan. Now, the reliability of risk analysis results is directly influenced by the quality of the schedule. If the schedule is of poor quality, then there will be little point in running a risk analysis because we will get inaccurate results. So we need to determine if the quality of the initial plan is sufficient to run a successful risk analysis. So select the S2 Diagnostics tab and click Fuse. In the bottom Ribbon Views pane, you will see that it is opened with the Schedule Quality view by default. Let's look at the Ribbon Analyzer. If you look at the Ribbon Analyzer pane on the right-hand side, from left to right, you'll note that we have 9 different metrics as part of the Schedule Quality ribbon view. The first metric is missing logic. This looks at the open-ended activities, missing predecessors, and missing successors. Currently, 11 activities are impacted by missing logic. Next, we have logic density. This is an indication of the level of detail and complexity of the logic. It is currently okay. So firstly, we need to ensure that we have sufficient logic in our schedule and that our logic has sufficient consistency and quality over time. Next, we can see that 25 critical activities have been identified. Now look at the metric for hard constraints. Hard constraints often contribute to negative float. So you'll see that we have 4 hard constraints in our schedule, and next to it we have 3 activities with negative float. Anytime we come across negative float in our schedule, that is an immediate indicator that we have issues regarding the realism of our schedule. Next, we have insufficient detail. This is an indicator of poor schedule definition, and we may need to add more activities later on. This is currently 0. If we look at number of lags, you will see that 30 lags have been identified, and this represents 57% of the schedule. Excessive use of lags can hide the level of detail required for the schedule. It can be difficult to track progress if lags are used instead of using actual activities. Next, number of leads refers to the number of activities carrying negative lag. This is currently 5 for our initial plan. Now, what are merge hotspots? Merge hotspots occur when we have multiple predecessors converging onto a single activity. This causes that activity to be very sensitive to schedule changes and slips. This is the same as merge bias that we will discuss in detail later in the course. The last metric on the right gives us our metric score. All of the metrics in this ribbon view add up to our metric score. So the score gives us an indication of the quality of our schedule and pinpoints where some of the problems lie. Currently, the metric score for the initial plan is only 26%. So the low score indicates that our schedule is currently of very poor quality. Therefore, before proceeding with our risk analysis, we will need to make significant improvements to our schedule. Click the Acumen icon in the top left and save the workbook, then close the workbook. In the next lesson, we will run a schedule cleanse so that we can identify and resolve problems in our schedule. In this lesson, we're going to run a schedule cleanse on our schedule so that we can identify and resolve any problems in the schedule. Please note that schedule cleanse was covered fully in my course Deltek Acumen Fuse step by step. Okay, select the Acumen icon in the top left and open My Risk workbook from recent workbooks. You'll note that it will open in the S1 Projects tab. Highlight the initial plan in the Projects pane. You'll note that the button for Cleanse Schedule becomes available in the top menu in the Scenario Generation group. Now click the Cleanse Schedule button in the top menu. The Schedule Cleanser window will open that lists items that could be cleansed or improved upon. You'll see from the list on the left that we can cleanse our schedule by minimizing or removing redundant logic, hard constraints, soft constraints, remaining leads, remaining lags, and links on summaries. Each item in the list will contain an explanation of what is expected to be achieved by minimizing the impact from the selected item. Also, the item tells us how many activities are affected in each category. On the right, we have a window that lists the affected activities for a selected category. Now, let's cleanse our schedule for initial plan. Firstly, click on the checkbox for redundant logic in the left pane. This will select all of the redundant logic in the right pane. Next, click on the checkbox to remove all of the hard constraints. Then select all of the soft constraints. Then select all of the remaining leads. Next, click on remaining lags and select all of them. You will note that all of them will be converted to activities. That's what we want. Now, by default, when you select remaining lags in the right pane, you will see that it will convert lags to activities. This makes sense because if you remove lags, this could impact your schedule very negatively. However, you will see in the right-hand pane that you can remove all lags if you wish. Finally, select the checkbox for links on summaries and make sure that you have converted them to normal activities. So we've selected all of redundant logic, hard constraints, soft constraints, remaining leads, remaining lags, and links on summaries. Click OK. You will note that an initial plan scenario has been created under the initial plan in the Projects pane. In the left-hand Projects pane, you'll see our initial plan scenario with 87 activities. The additional activities are due to our 33 remaining lags and 2 links on summaries being converted into activities. Now, select the S2 Diagnostics tab and click Fuse to view the analysis. You'll note that the scenario now has more critical activities, but it has 0 hard or soft constraints. We could improve the score even further by fixing the missing logic, but let's just leave it for now. Now, if you look at the scenario score, it is 86% as opposed to 26% for the original project. The schedule quality is now sufficient for us to continue with the risk analysis. Let's rename our initial plan scenario to My Risk. So click S1 Projects to return to the S1 Projects tab. Then highlight the initial plan scenario in the left-hand pane. Then, in the Activities pane, select the General tab in the lower half of the pane. In the description field, change the name to My Risk and press Tab on your keyboard. You'll see that the scenario has now been renamed to My Risk. Click the Acumen icon to close the workbook. Select Yes to save it. In the next lesson, we will learn about duration uncertainty. In the last lesson, we went through the process of cleansing and correcting our schedule so that we were satisfied with the schedule quality. In this lesson, we will discuss how to add uncertainty to our model. So what is duration uncertainty, or a 3-point estimate. Simply put, a 3-point estimate represents the minimum, most likely, and maximum durations for an activity. These durations can also be called pessimistic, most likely, and optimistic durations. If you look at the diagram, you will see the 3 points: minimum duration. If an activity progressed better than expected, how long would it take? Likely duration. If an activity progressed normally, how long would it take? And maximum duration. If an activity progressed worse than expected, how long would it take? A typical example of a 3-point estimate would be your drive to work. Along the road, there are 2 traffic lights. On a very good day, all of the traffic lights are green, and you arrive at work in 15 minutes. This is the minimum time. On a typical day, you will be held up by at least 1 red traffic light, and you will arrive at work in 20 minutes. This is the most likely time. On a bad day, you are held up by both traffic lights, and you arrive at work in 30 minutes. This is the maximum time. So there we have our 3-point estimate of 15, 20, and 30 minutes. Now, individual 3-point estimates for activities are typically determined during a risk workshop, so that the durations can be entered manually into the risk model. Factors that determine these 3 points could be the level of available scope, complexity of the project, the level of engagement with the market, personal experience, and benchmark data. During the risk workshop, the team members will capture data and enter it into a template. The 3-point estimates will represent the degree of buy-in and confidence in the durations and costs in the risk model. Typically, there are 2 traditional methods of developing a risk model: risk loading the critical path only, or risk loading a summary schedule. Both of these methods have advantages or disadvantages for the risk model. Firstly, we have risk loading the critical path only. The advantages would be there are only a limited number of activities that would need to be risk loaded. This would make the model easy to understand by the project team. The risk model would be based on the actual detailed schedule. Conversely, the disadvantages are we're assuming a known critical path. In reality, risk events can alter a critical path. We won't get a full understanding of our risks. Then we have the option where we develop a summary schedule, then risk load it accordingly. Typically, this would be done by developing, say, a level 2 schedule with 100 activities. In this case, the advantages are there are only a limited number of activities that would need to be risk loaded. This would make the model easy to understand by the project team. The disadvantages of this method would be we would lose detail, calendars, and logic that is present in the detailed schedule. Also, the summary schedule will need to be updated in line with the detailed schedule. Okay, select the Acumen icon in the top left and open My Risk Workbook from recent workbooks. You'll note that it will open in the S1 Projects tab. Then click the S3 Risk tab. In the left-hand Projects pane, you will see the initial plan and My Risk. Now, in Acumen Risk, uncertainty can be assigned in 2 ways. We can apply uncertainty templates or use the Risk Advisor. Both of these methods provide us with a quick, accurate way of entering uncertainty into a model without making the possible errors through manual entry. Typically, uncertainty can be assigned at activity, work breakdown structure, grouping, or work package levels. Click the Acumen icon to close the workbook. Select Yes to save it. Once uncertainty has been assigned at a higher level in the hierarchy, we can identify and manage individual exceptions and make changes more easily at the lower levels. In the next lesson, we will learn how to assign duration uncertainty to our model using the Risk Advisor.